We switch gears because that's what we do here on Talk of the Bay. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman, and I'm here with a couple of filmmakers who made a film about something very close to our hearts here at K-Squid, and that is the kelp forest. It's called the Sequoias of the Sea, and we have Natasha Benjamin and Ana Blanco, and they're working on a film. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Hi, Rachel. Can you hear me? This is Natasha.
I can. You sound great. There's a little bit of background noise, so if there's traffic or anything, you want to be in a quiet place. And Anna, are you there?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Rachel. This is Anna.
Anna, welcome. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. So the kelp forest is literally like, a mile away from where I'm sitting, and our Monterey Bay area sanctuary is where a lot of creatures depend on the kelp forest. Maybe our listeners have only seen it at the Monterey Bay Aquarium exhibit, unless they've gone, into the ocean. They might not have understood how key these plants are, or their algae actually, to the entire ecosystem. And that's what your film is about. Can you tell us what made you decide to do this film and where people can see it?
Yes, I would be happy to start the conversation. So Natasha and I both live in the Bay Area. We've known each other for many years. I run the Ocean Film Festival here in San Francisco, and Natasha is a marine biologist, as well as a surfer and a scuba diver. And we've worked together for many years, and her father is a executive producer in the film space as well. He came to visit one day, and I said, let's have lunch with your dad. And we were talking about films in the film festival, and Natasha had noticed that the kelp was disappearing on one of her scuba dives. So she asked me if there were any films on kelp. And this was now 5 years ago when we had this lunch. And at the time, there were no films about the disappearing kelp. And her father, without skipping a beat, looked at us and said, well, why don't you two make a film about disappearing kelp? And we looked at each other, and at first we laughed, and then we looked at each other again and said, well, that makes perfect sense. We should make a film together. So it's our first full-length documentary film, and it's showing in Santa Cruz on Friday, February 6th at the Boardroom. And we're very excited to be in Santa Cruz and show the film.
And where is the Boardroom for people who may not be familiar?
I'm one of those people, so I'll turn it over to Natasha.
So it's the Santa Cruz Boardroom, which is a skateboard shop right down on 41st, a couple blocks from the ocean, kind of in that Pleasure Point area.
I see. That's a good place for it. So the first question, of course, people are going to ask you, and I will, even though it's my second question, is why is the kelp disappearing? It looks healthy from above, but what's going on under there?
Great question. And I mean, this is really why we made the film, is because I was shocked when I started seeing the kelp loss. And then to understand that we actually lost 95% of bull kelp on the North Coast was really, really shocking to me and to a lot of other marine scientists. In Santa Cruz, you primarily have giant kelp, which is a different species of kelp, but it's kind of where we shift from Southern California kelp to kind of North California kelp. And there is still some very healthy patches of kelp in Santa Cruz. And that's why you can see it from the surface. That's why the waves are so good there. But we've seen declines. Things have changed over the last 10 years drastically. And this was due to a perfect storm of ocean conditions. We had warm water. We had the loss of keystone predators in the system. We lost sunflower sea stars and all sea stars along the coast in 2014-15. And then purple urchins exploded, and these purple urchins mowed down all the kelp. And it was this kind of perfect storm of all of these different things in an ecosystem out of balance that caused this dramatic loss. And we're starting, in some areas you are starting to see kelp come back, But up on the North Coast in kind of Sonoma, Mendocino, there's still tremendous loss. And where these kelp forests once lived is now just a desert of purple sea urchins.
Wow. Now, sea urchins are also prey for sea otters and humans.
Yes.
So they can't keep up. They're not like keeping up with how many are exploding.
So sea otters, actually don't see them really north of San Francisco. You do obviously in Santa Cruz and Monterey, that's one of the reasons why the kelp is healthier south of San Francisco, is because there is a keystone predator, which is the otter, that has helped balance the ecosystem. But on the North Coast, we don't have any otters. We lost the sunflower sea stars, which are the main predator of urchins, and really humans are the last predator left. So that has been part of the reason why we saw such dramatic loss on the North Coast.
So what do you think would bring back that ecosystem? I read somewhere, and maybe it's just the kind of kelp we have here in our Monterey Bay, but it grows like a couple feet a week. Tell us more about, like, if it could regenerate, why that might actually happen pretty fast.
Well, just like you said, it's one of the fastest growing organisms on the planet. So that gives us a lot of hope. But what we really need to do is rebalance the ecosystem. And that involves removing urchins and planting baby kelp. And that's what they're doing on the North Coast, and that's what the film is about. We talk a lot about the restoration work that's happening. There's also a lot of restoration work happening in Monterey Bay with the dive community, where they're removing urchins as well, and doing kelp restoration. And one of the most exciting things that's happening is in Moss Landing, where they're trying to grow baby sunflower sea stars and slowly reintroduce those back into the system to help manage and balance the urchin populations.
Now, a lot of people are familiar with the regular old sea stars that look like maybe 5 arms or whatever they have, but these are, like you said, they look like sunflowers. They're kind of weird looking in their giantness, and you don't see them very often. So what happened to these amazingly weird looking creatures to make them die off so quickly? Do we know?
We do. It took us a while. We didn't know at first. For many years, when they first died off, there was a sea star wasting disease that killed off all of the sea stars. We used to call them starfish. Now we call them sea stars because they're not fish. And many of the species came back, but the sunflower sea star, this large one that can grow 24 arms and could be, 2 feet across, that is a voracious predator of urchins and many other things in the kelp forest ecosystem, disappeared and never came back. It is locally extinct on the West Coast. So a lot of science, a lot of researchers have been spending quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to bring them back. But before we bring them back, we have to make sure that that disease is still not in the system, because then you would reintroduce these sea stars and they would just die immediately, it was really quite devastating when this disease hit. So they are working on it, and the Sunflower Sea Star Lab in Moss Landing just put a few individuals out into the ocean, and they did really well. So we're very, very hopeful about this.
What a cool job to go check on your baby sea stars. I mean,
and they are like one of the cutest things I've ever seen. So I highly recommend visiting the Sunflower Sea Star Lab.
So if you're a diver, you can also go see them in action. We have just a little bit more time. So this is happening in Santa Cruz again in February. Did you say on the 6th? The showing?
Yes, yeah. Friday, February 6th at 6:30.
At the Boardroom, which is a skate shop. Why did you pick a skate shop? Is that because people there like the ocean, or?
The owner of the skate shop is a big surfer and ocean person, And he also does a radio show called Off the Lip Radio Show, which is a podcast that I was on, and I told them about the film, and they all got super excited about it and said, you should come to our shop and show the film. You know, the Santa Cruz community is an ocean community and cares deeply about its ocean ecosystem. And, you know, the surf community, people that are in the water care about what's happening. And a lot of people don't realize this kind of drastic loss that's happened, because, as you said, from the surface, it usually looks fine. But unless you're in the water and experiencing it, it's hard to know what's going on. So that's what this film does, is we hope to bring awareness around this issue.
Yeah. And is there anything non-divers or somebody's typing, non-divers or surfers could do if they don't go in the water to help the situation?
Anna, do you want to talk about some of our...
I think if it's someone who doesn't come into the water, I think, you know, there's other organizations that are actually doing a lot of the research and actually doing the restoration work. Reef Check is one of them. We have a Take Action page on our website, which is sequoiasofthesea.org. And there's lots of resources and lots of ways for people to get involved. One is to obviously come and see the film, tell your friends about the film, tell your friends about what's happening with the kelp. But our page on our website has a lot of different resources.
That sounds like a great bunch of things we could do if you don't get in the water. You know, you said something earlier I wanted to go track back to, and it was that the surfers like kelp because it does something to the waves. It makes the waves better. I had never heard that. How does that work?
So the kelp actually grooms the waves. That's why the surf is so good in Santa Cruz, because there is a healthy kelp bed right off the coast there. And it does two things. It tempers down the wind chop that happens in the ocean and helps form those beautiful glassy waves. But surfers tend to have a love-hate relationship with the kelp, because when you're surfing and your board or your fin gets caught on the kelp and slows you down, it's not ideal, because you want to be building momentum. But it's also where you find some of the best surf in the world, is where you have these healthy kelp forests.
So what about the economies of these communities up north of us? You know, you mentioned the Sonoma coast and Humboldt. There are people who surf up there. Does that mean that their waves have gotten choppier?
Yes, it's really changed. I've been diving and surfing along the North Coast for the last 10, 20 years, and everything has changed up there. The surf has changed. The entire ecosystem has changed. The fish populations have changed. The infrastructure, the nursery ground, the home for all of these organisms has disappeared. So these communities, not the communities in the ocean and the communities on land have been severely impacted by this biodiversity loss and this losing an underwater forest. They depend on that. People depend on the kelp forest for their livelihoods, for Native American traditions, for tourism, for big parts of coastal economies. And this loss we're just kind of understanding how this loss is impacting those communities.
It's like a giant chain reaction you're describing that maybe we didn't even know existed until it started to go away. And that's a fascinating analogy. You call it sequoias of the sea because they're tall, not because they live forever, right? They don't necessarily live forever. Maybe aren't as resilient, perhaps, as redwoods are.
Definitely don't live as long, but they provide the habitat, the same kind of habitat. Like when you're diving through a kelp forest, you look up and you see the fish swimming through, kind of like you would see birds, flying through a forest. So it's the equivalent of a land-based forest underwater in terms of its beauty and in terms of its importance. But it's a different life cycle. And one of the things we talk about in the film is if we lost 95% of the redwoods, people would be screaming about it. But because this is happening underwater, it's unknown. It's an unknown story.
Well, you're shining a light on an unknown thing that's something we like to do here at K-Squid. Why we're called K-Squid in the first place is we love our ocean backyard, and a good portion of our broadcast area is the ocean and fishermen and surfers who probably don't have radios with them while they're surfing. But we chose K-Squid for a reason, because we wanted to honor the ocean that is our main source of life here in the Monterey Bay. And I'm so glad this is premiering here. Is this the first time people will have seen it right here in Santa Cruz?
No, it's not. The film was screened last April in the International Ocean Film Festival, and it's had a number of screenings since then throughout the state of California, but it is, in fact, the first screening in Santa Cruz.
Well, fantastic. I want to thank you both for bringing our attention to this important issue and for making a beautiful film. If you can't go underwater, go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium and look at their kelp exhibit, and you might appreciate the beauty of these underwater creatures. And are they plankton or plants or what? Maybe I'm not characterizing them correctly.
They are algae.
Okay.
Large brown algae is the scientific term. But yes, they're beautiful and highly recommend the aquarium.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you both for making the film and for spending the time with us here on Talk of the Bay. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
You have a good
Thank
evening.
you for having us.
Yeah. That was Anna and Natasha, the filmmakers of Sequoias of the Sea. And in just a moment, we'll be right back with you. We're going to play a short little bit about K-Squid and then tell you about Dr. Dawn's show coming up at 6. So stay tuned. This is Talk of the Bay. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. You're listening to The Squid.